a rainwater.
That'd be easier. I've heard somebody talk about it.
Sometimes I hit 911 button accidentally.
It's on mute here.
All right. Call to order the January regular meeting of the local planning agency. I have roll call, please. From Wakeland.
Steve Coates.
Glenda Glover.
James McPherson.
Sam Kincaid.
Susan Moss.
Jamie Seifert.
Tom Wynn.
All right, can we stand for the pledge?
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And can I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second. Keep clicking.
All right.
Wait.
All right, there it is. And it is adopted. And a motion for the approval of the minutes.
I wasn't here.
Second?
Second. I know that mover is not moving.
It's not moving.
Is that the sound you were talking about?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, if you'll do it manually, I'll just enter it.
Oh, there it comes.
You
There's a
don't
second.
mind?
No.
I don't know why it's not allowing it.
It's just waiting.
I did.
Just waiting for a second.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
I know, I still have.
Oh,
Okay. Is it not working?
Who was the seconder?
Who did the second on that one?
I did.
Yeah, you did the
Hers still
first.
says
Okay.
mover. Give me a second. How about
Who
that?
did the mover?
There we go.
I second
Did
it.
it go? Okay.
All right.
We got it.
Okay, and any public comments? Only one person public? No. Okay. Moving on to ordinances.
Okay, we have ordinance number 2133, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 6 of the Land Development Code for street access and driveway design requirements, providing for authority, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. This is a public hearing, and Mr. Tim Gibson will present the ordinance to the board.
Good evening, Tim Gibson, Planning Supervisor for the City of Fort Walton Beach. First of all, I'll apologize for the only having this on the agenda. Usually if it's an LDC change, I try to combine that up whenever we're already going to have a meeting. We were going to have a variance coming to this meeting, but the applicant withdrew their request at the very last minute, so we already had this scheduled to do this in here. This should be a fairly straightforward one. As you know, with the city, there's a lot of development that has been gone on. There's very few undeveloped properties in the city, so now people are trying to find new ways to even continue to develop. We're finding that we have some smaller lots where people are trying to do more with the smaller lots on there. And we've been receiving numerous inquiries recently for lots that are legally sized lots, but that they're smaller width lots. And with that, we've been running into some issues with some code language that's in there that we're trying to change to basically rectify that problem. I did in the background on here spell out all the different minimum lot width sizes on there, and I'll point out that R2 and MX1, the minimum lot size width or lot width size is 50 feet. And with that, and in R2 and MX1, obviously single family residential is allowed in those ones, but also other things are allowed in those types of developments. Currently in LDC 6.1.5, it states that all developments other than single family have to have driveways located no closer to an intersection than 75 feet and be at least 25 feet away from interior lines. So what that means is you have a 50-foot wide MX2 lot, or MX1 lot, which is allowed. If you put anything other than single-family residential on there, you've got to be 25 foot from this side or 25 foot from this side. Basically, you cannot legally fit a driveway on that property. And if it's a corner lot that's 50 foot wide, you're going to run into even more of the same problem there, where it's 75 foot from that corner. These are some of the stuff, I mean, it's just the language that was in the code that was developed. We've kind of identified these with several things. Primarily, people are looking to put a duplex on a property. Well, that's other than single family, they have to have that 25 foot requirement, or even the 75 foot from the intersection. So with that, it basically would mean that, you know, these lots have to be over 50 foot wide if they're interior, and over 100 foot wide if they're going to be on a corner lot. So we did do some research to look and see what some other areas have done on this one, and remarkably, it's kind of similar as what we've seen in the other places. It wasn't really identified how you would handle these smaller lots. So we just kind of came up with our own developments and stuff in there. The key changes that we made is that the section where it talks about the edge of a driveway for all uses other than single-family residential dwelling, that they're located at least a minimum 75 feet from the proposed right-of-way. We just added a condition in there that if the lot width does not permit the distance, the distance can be modified, but shall not be less than 50% of the lot width, and regardless of lot width, shall not be less than 25 feet. So what that means is basically if you have a 100-foot wide lot, that it would be 50 foot from the intersection. If you have a 50-foot wide lot, it could be 25 foot from the intersection. So basically pushing it as far away from that intersection as we can, but still allowing it to where a driveway could be put onto the property there. Some other changes that we came up with as we were looking through this section of the code that we've run into problems with before is that where we have a lot of residential development properties, they've got like their primary driveway going to their garage, and a lot of other people have had like, you know, they've got like a building in their back, or a garage, or storage, or they tow trailers into the back of their yard, and they want to have two different driveways. The way our code currently reads is that for basically anything, that they have to have at least 50-foot separation between the driveways. And so it basically has forced a lot of people to do like a horseshoe driveway, so that way it's not two separate driveways, it's one driveway with a horseshoe and then leading up. So what we're recommending on this one is to basically change that to say if it's other than 1, 2, or 3 family residential dwellings, that they have to be separated by that 50 foot. So basically that's where if you're getting into the really big multifamily or the commercial developments, they have to be separated by the 50 foot, because that's going to be where a lot of your traffic is coming off there. For the one family, the duplexes, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to necessarily separate. Theoretically, you can have a duplex that they want one driveway for each side of the duplex. Per our code, they would have to be separated by a minimum of 50 feet, otherwise it wouldn't be allowed. This just kind of gives a little bit more flexibility in there for those ones. And then the other thing that we had in here was, we talked about it where it said other than single family, that it had to be 25 foot off of those property lines. That would have also, as current written, apply to duplexes, triplexes, all those types of things out there, that we didn't really feel the intensity was necessary to separate it from their adjacent property. We really want to keep that separation from those little commercial properties that are closer to the residential. So what we're recommending as change on that one is basically that we exempt 1, 2, or 3 family residentials from any of that interior side setback requirements, and only require that on all the other ones if they're adjacent to that 1, 2, or 3 family residential. So if you have 2 commercial properties that are close to each other, we're not going to require that separation, because I mean, it's really not, we're not really trying to protect that residential piece on there. And those are the 3 changes that we're recommending for that section of the Land Development Code. Of a note on there, there will be another ordinance coming to change some more information on townhomes that's also been involved with the driveways, but that's a little bit more in depth, and we're making some more changes into that one, and that's a completely separate section of the Land Development Code. So that will be coming later on down the road with that one. And with that, pending questions, staff respectfully recommends the LPA approval to recommend City Council adoption of ordinance number 2133 to amend the Land Development Code, Chapter 6, to amend driveway design requirements.
I'm sorry if I missed it. What started this?
Really, we've had some developments that came in, and in some pre-application meetings. It was specifically around some duplexes. And that's what really kind of brought this up in looking at this. And we're like, you know, the question on where they could put the driveway came up. It was specifically for a corner lot. And that's when we pulled up the design guidelines in the land development code for it. It was like, well, you have to be 75 feet away from the intersection and 25 feet away from your property line, but you're only 50-foot wide lot.
Yeah.
You cannot legally put a driveway on that property that was going to be 50. It's a legal lot. The lot met the design criteria in the land development code, but the fact that they were trying to put a duplex on it basically made it so that they weren't going to be allowed to have a driveway on that property. Not sure how this has probably never been caught before, because I'm pretty sure that there's been duplexes and triplexes that have been put on there. It's just something that we've noticed now that the code just doesn't make it so that we can't approve these things. And so we basically just wanted to fix the code so that we could have some sort of criteria on there that we could lean on and still provide as much separation, especially from intersections, as we could.
Are there any negatives about doing this?
Sorry.
Is there any possible negatives?
I mean, some of this, obviously is going to allow some of those closer to the intersections. That was one of the things that we really kind of wanted to focus on, trying to make sure that we keep that separation in there. Because what we don't want to do is have that driveway and blocking like people from seeing what's coming down the other intersection. That's why we specifically wrote in there the no less than 25 foot from those intersections. We felt that was important. The 75 foot is probably more ideal for your bigger, heavier developments, but we felt that with keeping it at 25 foot would only be allowed if it was going to be a 50-foot wide lot. You could go down to 25 foot. We figured with a 50-foot wide lot, it's not going to be that super intense use probably that's going to be there. It's such a smaller lot that it wouldn't be that heavy industrial use that we would see there. That's why we're trying to make the ratio of the width to kind of offset that there. But that would be the only negative that I can see from this. Really, it just kind of puts that a little bit more of a common sense approach to it, rather than just having this hard number that doesn't really fit all the size of the lots that we have.
Yeah, the only thing I was worried about was the triangular line of sight, as you were saying. Like if someone had a van at their end of the driveway,
Yes.
that's 25 feet, There's not a lot of stopping time for somebody. That's the only concern I had.
Yep. And keep in mind, these are measured from property lines. That 25 foot is from the property line. In most places, there are a few places where the property line is the edge of your pavement, but typically you've got 10, 15 foot right-of-way buffer before the actual pavement of the road starts in there. So typically, this is going to push it back even further than that 25 foot.
Okay.
But that does not apply to single family at all.
The single family does have a 25 foot restriction on intersections.
But not on the property line.
Not on property lines, interior property lines, but from intersections, they have a 25 foot requirement. So that's why we try to keep that 25 foot as kind of the standard in there from the intersections.
So if they have a fence on their property line, right, whatever that is, it's 25 feet from that edge of that fence, right, is the closest edge of the driveway.
If the fence is on their property line, yes. So the fence and the driveway are not related at all, but
Right.
theoretically, if that fence is where their driveway is, where their property line
I'm
is,
just trying to-
25 foot from there would be where the driveway. But again, that's only for lots that would be 50 foot long.
So it doesn't open the door for wider lots to get.
That's why we wrote
It's
this
just
in there specifically, there would be no less, it would be 50% of the width. So if you've got a 100 foot wide lot, well, your minimum is going to be 50 foot off that property. So it really just, we're trying to push it to the right as far as we can away from that intersection, but still make it so that it's reasonable.
And there's no concern about like the visibility of, like if somebody has, kind of like, I think you were saying, like if there's vans or RVs or boats parked in somebody's driveway, that shorter distance creating a visibility problem with that intersection.
It is a possibility. That's what I'm saying right now with R1, single-family residentials, it's the minimum is 25 foot from that intersection. And this is just basically opening that up for your non-single-family residential to be able to have that same 25 foot. I mean, theoretically, you can run into those problems. I mean, but honestly, nothing keeps somebody from driving and parking in the corner of their property and blocking it even more without a driveway.
People park all
They can park wherever they want on their property. I understand, I mean, that's less likely than having a driveway there, somebody parking on their driveway.
Right.
But that's where we felt keeping it back that 25 foot would be reasonable.
I move to accept ordinance 2133 with staff's recommendation to move it forward.
Second.
And before you actually vote, make sure to open up for public comment, even though there's no one here.
Any other comments or discussion?
I mean, Ashley's someone.
I'll put a staff member.
You're still public.
All right, and it is adopted. Director reports.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Board member reports. Anybody? Anybody? No? We are adjourned.
Thank you all for coming. Sorry,
Super
I
quick.
couldn't reach out, but we